to reiterate how grateful we are to have her speak with us today, and also grateful to all of you taking the time to join us. Shreya Durvasla, as Jamie said, the Catalyst Program Director. Our featured speaker today, Marissa Merculieff, is an enrolled tribal member and the Director of the Office of Justice and Governance Administration, where she represents the tribe on a national level to build and enhance self-governance, economic and environmental strength, and stability, and secure health welfare resources for the Aleut people. Marissa is also a 2024 Catalyst Awardee, so we're very excited that she's part of our vibrant community now. As many of you know, Catalyst Awards, the Catalyst Award is funded by many of our members, of some funders in the room here, which is very exciting. The application review and selection process really weave together efforts by women across our sector. So community leaders, environmental funders, Rachel's Network members, board members, advisors, who've really come together to uplift and invest in women of color leaders in our movement. Jamie is going to put a link to the Rachel's Network Catalyst Award in the chat. So if you have more questions about that, you can click on that or come find me. I'm excited to be speaking with Marissa today, but I think before we get into the questions, Marissa has something special for us. So I'll hand it off to you, Marissa.
Awesome. Thank you, Shreya. As I joined a little bit late, I apologize to everyone who is on. I'm very happy to be here. Shreya and I had worked on planning this, I think February or March, and I set it way far out so I can make sure everyone was in, all my kids were in school, everything was settled. The unknown at the time was my oldest, graduating from high school, did not pick out a college yet. He chose University of Oregon quarter schedule, and it's starting this week, and his move-in date was assigned for today. So we had to fly over to Eugene, Oregon. He drove across the country. It's a little bit chaotic this morning, but I made sure I did not want to lose a spot. I was so happy to join, and very, very honored, of course, to be an awardee, and did not want to miss this talk at all. So thank you all for your patience. I apologize for the lighting even. I didn't have a good setup spot. But yes, glad that I can make it. Did not want to miss it. I'm so thankful to Rachel's Network and everyone I've met so far. And just really, really excited to be a part of this network. But as Shreya said, Marissa Merculieff, I'm from St. Paul Island out in the Bering Sea. I do have a short little video just to try to set the stage for the talk, in case I'm sure there are people that are not familiar where St. Paul is. This is just a short 2-minute clip, little over 2 minutes, that was used at Capitol Hill Ocean Week down in DC when I spoke there when we were working on a National Marine Sanctuary nomination, but it really kind of captured the beauty of the island and why the ecosystem was so unique and why we really needed a sanctuary. And we'll go into kind of where that's at and where we're at now with the new administration. But this video really does a nice job, I think, of kind of starting the background for the talk and just showing everyone where we're at on the planet. So yeah, if you want to share that.
goodness, it's so stunning, Marissa. Thank you for that video. And I love that you got to see the beautiful landscape and the ocean, but then also these like shots of like all the people and culture, and of course the wonderful animals too, cute little critters. So do you want to get into a little bit about St. Paul, how you got into the work that you do? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually kind of a perfect video to lead into everything going on. I think a lot of it highlights kind of how complex it is being a tribal government versus just like, a nonprofit or some other organization focused on one mission. Everything you saw on there is part of our mission as a tribal government, as a federally recognized tribe, is we have to take care of all of that, all aspects. Number one, of course, being our people, the health and wellness of our tribal members. I really like that video. It's perfect for today because my son chose University of Oregon because he wants to go into environmental sciences and indigenous studies. And that video really showed how growing up on St. Paul just makes natural scientists, because we are growing. And that's what was so cute about all those kids. They're working with Fish and Wildlife Service, with National Marine Fisheries Service, on all the science right there at our fingertips at all times, growing up in that. And that naturally comes with how to manage our ecosystem, how to make sure conservation efforts are working, how to keep this all in place for our generations. And that's really what we focus on in the tribal government. And it's very tricky, and it shifts with almost every administration, the things that we can work on. So that's kind of why, like, this is an interesting time for all of us, obviously, in this work, and a very difficult time. But at St. Paul, it has been there. Our people have been there for, we're 10,000-year-old culture. We are in the middle of the Bering Sea, in middle of the Bering Sea commercial fishing industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Crab, pollock, like all these really important resources, seafood resources for the country and the world, really come right of our backyard. And there's just so much complexity going on around us in our ecosystem. It's very, very hard for us to focus on just one thing. Like the fur seals, we're called the people of the seal. We have a long history with the fur seals. The Russians brought us from the Aleutian chain up to St. Paul Island and St. George to harvest the fur seals for the fur trade back in whenever that started, 1800s. And then the US actually purchased purchased Alaska from Russia because of the fur seal trade happening on the Pribilof Islands. Little known fact, it's called Stewart's Folly. Everyone thought it was a joke that Alaska was purchased, but it was because of the fur seal trade. And the US government continued to utilize the labor of our people up until 1983. Actually, we were wards of the government. So we went from a fur seal industry to a commercial fishing industry. We're commercial halibut fishermen now. All of that is under threat, all of it, for many, many reasons. Like an ecosystem is complex, right? You can't really pinpoint any one specific thing. Everything interacts together, and it's very, very complex, and the issues are complex. And how we try to focus it's an everyday kind of mind game, I think. What are we going to work on today? What's the crisis of the day? But yeah, so I can't remember the flow, Shreya. I'm very glad you're here as the moderator.
I know.
Through.
Yeah, we're just gonna have a conversation. I mean, we have all these questions, but I know we're gonna have some amazing questions from our participants. And now I'm gonna try to follow some of these threads. I mean, I'm curious about how you got into this work around tribal governance and self-determination. And I'm guessing it has to do with the fact that I can't believe you were wards of the government until 1983. That's like so recent. So what brought you into sort of the more of the legal framework? And can you speak a little bit about the work that you do in the office?
Yeah, sure. So I started, I guess, like I said, we're all kind of natural scientists growing up. So started college to do marine biology, but I was only 16 when I chose a college. I chose Arizona State. Did not think that through for marine biology. That's what's funny when you're a young kid, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go to the middle of the desert and study marine biology. I just wanted to be in the sunshine at that time, and on a road system is kind of how I chose that. I'm like, I can go on road trips, see the country. But I ended up shifting to conservation biology and got my Bachelor of Science in that because I really wanted to, my whole goal was to kind of come home back to St. Paul and run our ecosystem conservation office as a part of the tribal government, just that one small little office. Like I didn't have I want to help all across the board of the government. After college, I worked with what is now Ocean Conservancy, used to be Center for Marine Conservation. And the woman actually who kind of took me under her wing and was my mentor, she's like, and she was a lawyer, but working in conservation work. She's like, why don't you go to law school? You need your next step in a degree. Law school, a law degree is very flexible. You don't ever have to practice law if you don't want, but it really gives you critical thinking skills, like how to approach problems. And so I went back to Arizona State for environmental law, and Indian law is what we call it then. I think we're still calling it Indian law, but indigenous law, basically, Native American law. And then funny enough, like it was all of our Native organizations and tribe that had put me all the way through school, through law school. But when I got out, it was hard finding a job with them. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to move to New Zealand. I just, on a whim, just up and decided I'm going down there. It looks nice. I just watched a movie. I think it was Whale Rider. It looked beautiful. So my sister actually worked in healthcare. She knew a doctor who knew a doctor. So I just bought a ticket to New Zealand. And this doctor picked me up and I stayed with her family, and she knew the CEO of one of the tribes down there, and they were just starting to work on their co-management arrangement with the British Crown over their ancestral river. So it really captured everything I wanted to do: create a co-management legal framework, work on conservation. The indigenous part of it, it was their ancestral river. They're the most important part of them as their culture, but also a very commercially utilized river of New Zealand. And I spent a year working with the tribe down there, and it was pretty much everything I could ask for in a job. Like it crossed everything, right? Everything I wanted to do really excited me. So came back from New Zealand, still couldn't get a job with my people. That's funny. We're working on that. We're fixing that. And worked at GoDaddy of all places because I had a good friend, general counsel there. And so learned intellectual property, focused there for a few years. Then finally we got a new president into our tribal government. He was like, Marissa, why aren't you working for us? I was like, that is a very good question. So he pulled me in. I started actually working with them. I think just on general policy ideas. We were a very small tribal government back then, had a smaller focus. We're fixing our tribal codes because we have our own laws as a tribal government. We were building a tribal court system. And so I kind of helped with that, and just gradually as time went on, got more and more and more into the national level politics, because as a federally recognized tribe, we have a government to government relationship with the federal government. So we have a lot of work with them, and just, yeah, I guess just kind of evolved into that role because it was a need of ours. I'm actually the first Aleut attorney coming out of the called, not just St. Paul, but out of our culture. When I graduated law school, yeah, they did a little documentary on me, and so that was cool. So as the first Aleut lawyer, it was just kind of a need across the board to help our tribal government grow in so many different areas. And that's kind of why I just didn't get to just focus on the environment anymore. Although as Indigenous people, without a healthy environment, as we all know, then nothing else is healthy. So there's always that aspect to the work. But we were really focused on becoming more self-sufficient, self-reliant as a government, trying to break away from the federal government. And that's kind of where the self-determination piece comes in, is just making sure that we are in control of our destiny is really what self-determination means, right? Like we get to determine how we function and how we practice our culture out on St. Paul, and whatever that looks like for us is for us to decide. And that's kind of really how I got into this, and really advocate very fiercely for my people, because it really is up to us. And we're so isolated. Nobody else can tell us or really can understand what it's like trying to survive out there as a people. So it really should be and needs to be up to us what we do.
Right. I mean, you know best of what's going on there. I mean, you talked a little bit about the variety of issues you're now working on, and I'm sure the challenges are many and varied. What are some of the things that really rise to the top with this particular administration and government, from that government to government framework? What are you working on these days?
So we had to do a major shift, as many of us did, right? Going into this new administration, new era of politics. Under President Biden, we had this amazing opportunity. When they started out, they wanted to do big conservation efforts. They wanted to do big Indigenous efforts. So we came up with the idea of doing a national marine sanctuary around the Pribilofs. St. George at the time, our sister island, had already nominated a very small one around their islands. It wasn't getting anywhere. We decided, you know what, this might be the time to really take a look at this. Everything was right with the Biden administration and we proposed a co-managed sanctuary because that really goes to the self-determination part. We did not want to just invite back in the federal government. It's not too long that they finally left, right? Invite back in the federal government without any control or say over the priorities of the sanctuary, what those like we needed to have that equal voice. And so we started down that path. We successfully got the sanctuary into an inventory because as you can see, it's, the ecosystem wise, everything is there. I mean, we're called the Galapagos of the North, really, because of all of our diversity of hundreds of species of seabirds. And that's our huge tourist industry, just comes to see birds. And then we are the largest breeding ground of the northern fur seal. So all the environmental boxes were checked very easily for doing a sanctuary. The co-management was much more difficult for the federal government to figure out. And that wasn't just our tribe, that was across the board because President Biden wanted co-management in all these different spaces for tribes. But nobody really knew what that looked like or how it could work into a very bureaucratic framework already in place. Very difficult for us within the Department of Commerce and NOAA and National University Service, who has a lot less government to government relationships with tribes than Department of Interior does over land. So we just could not get to a place where we were satisfied with what co-management could look like. And they weren't, not for lack of effort, they just weren't able to regulatory get us there either to figure it out. So basically we just said, all right, sanctuary is kind of on pause. And in the meantime, the fishing industry came out hard against it and opposed it. But that is still in the inventory. It'll be up for review, I think, in 2 more years, 2 or 3, and we'll look at it again, depending on the timing of the politics. But obviously, when we moved into President Trump administration, none of that was going to fly anyway. We're not going to get those big, broad area-based management initiatives. They're not going to make any movement. So we really we've always had the same priorities. It's just how we put forward those priorities depending on the politics. We've always wanted to do, we're kind of shifting to a research economy because we're at a great place to do all kinds of Arctic research, scientific research. We wanted to build our education part. We have a Bering Sea campus that is partnered with the only tribal college in Alaska to do courses. And then we have an environmental monitoring app that we've been rolling out for a few years. And so there are things that we've been working on that were not like a huge, package of sanctuary, but parts of this, what we wanted out of a sanctuary, which was education, research, environmental monitoring. So what we've really done, I think, in this administration is focus on those things individually and really work to build them. And what we found is we have a huge research center that we've built on the island facility. We're still building up. Our senators for Alaska really love that idea of Arctic research, and Arctic research is really just picking up overall, not just the science side of things, but Department of Defense, or War as it's called now, that side of things. So we want to be, if whatever's going on in the Bering Sea, we want to be sure we know about it, we're a part of it, and hopefully can lead it and prioritize it. So that's really been our focus, is building that research facility, working with our delegation, working with this administration on what Arctic research could look like. There's a huge interest in the Arctic for this administration for a lot of different things. But there are a lot of ways that we can position ourselves to still work on conservation without calling it conservation. With all the shipping going to start going through the Arctic, oil spill response will be a big one. We want to be sure that, we're prepared and ready for any kind of oil spill response needed that need to be launched out of St. Paul, which would include the Coast Guard. Yeah, lots of different things. And I'm sorry, there's just so much, right, to try to unpack into. Like I said, we don't have just one mission. We have a whole bunch of little parts trying to make the overall goal of health and welfare of our tribal members. And that's just so difficult to do piece by piece. But that's where we're at. And we seem to be making some good progress doing it piece by piece. Like I said, area-based management, broad stroke conservation, that's like dead at the start right now. So I think this really building and showing that we have the capacity, the knowledge to make these things happen and do that from the island has been, it's been a good tactic so far.
I mean, I think it's a very strategic response to, pivot and really do that like you said, tactic by tactic, issue by issue approach and claw out the victories where you can and kind of maintain those partnerships and relationships where you can. You didn't mention this as a challenge, but I'm just going to throw it in there as moderator's privilege because this came up in one of our earlier conversations about the loss of commercial passenger air service. And I know you were talking a little bit about this Galapagos of the North and how tourism and especially birding is so important. And I remember just being like baffled by this whole situation. So I don't know if you wanted to share a little bit about, yeah, the runway and the airport and all of that.
Yeah, that's been crazy curveball thrown this summer. We used to be, as I was a kid growing up, a huge spot for kind of ecotourism for our first seals, our birds. We had an enormous old World War II cargo plane that used to be our passenger service that became hard to maintain. So we had to go to a smaller plane, and we've just been slowly being cut smaller to smaller to smaller. We are a community served under the Essential Air Service program with Department of Transportation. So it's a federal subsidy program. We are an extremely expensive place to serve in that program because we're so far in the water. Aircraft have to be certified for that amount of water overseas, over water. And there are very few in Alaska who could serve that. And we're not a community that can take a 747 necessarily, nor do we have the amount of passenger service. So that's kind of been the struggle, is finding an aircraft that can get over water certified within this EAS program. And at the end of August, sorry, my son just came in and grabbed my phone, and I'm tethered to my phone for internet because we don't have internet here. I'm like, don't touch this. So at the end of, we got notice that our current passenger service was going to be just stopped by the carrier. They're going bankrupt. Again, this is our second carrier going bankrupt. Again, we're a very expensive place to serve. And so we as a community, and I think this is one of the strongest, and it just shows the strength we have as a community. The city of St. Paul, the tribal government, our Fishermen's Association, who holds all of our fishing quota, and our village corporation, who is the landowner, all came together along with our school district and our clinic, our medical service, came together in what's called the Spirit Group, St. Paul Island Response Team. And I love that our city manager came up with it. I'm like, we need to brand that. We need jackets. Like, this is great. Coming from the GoDaddy branding side, I know it's a property. I'm like, oh, this is a great brand. But we met every week through the summer, 8 a.m. Fridays, to really start to tackle this. Like, okay, we do not want a smaller plane, which was all that was being pitched, was a smaller plane, like an 8-passenger plane. I'm like, that is not going to work. Tourism will definitely die on that. And combined with our extreme weather difficulties we've been having the last few summers, is a lot more fog. We've always been a foggy island, but I think with climate change, however you want to characterize that, fog is very thick and very much more around our island. Like, it's just thick walls of fog day in and day out. So planes are having a hard time landing anyway. So we just really just got on it with our delegation, Department of Transportation, did everything we could as kind of the team of entities with our lobbyists, and pushed and pushed and pushed. And we just got news last week that a large carrier with a large plane that we initially had wanted, it's called a Saab, and I forget how many seats it is. They put in a proposal to Essential Air Service, and that has been accepted. It is, again, extremely expensive. So we're still making sure our delegation supports that amount of money coming to just St. Paul. And they still have to get overwater certified, which will take 60 to 90 days. I don't think we want to rush the certification for overwater. You need the lifeboats. Otherwise it's parachutes. But in the meantime, what we've been doing as a community is running a charter service. So we've been working with another airline and chartering planes, which we have now belovedly called SEAL Force One. I'm all into the I love the branding parts. I'm like, now it's SEAL Force One. We have a logo. Our tribal government has been kind of operating it with 2 key staff members just every day, working with security airlines, setting up the charters. And what's great about that is being able to go around the weather. So if it's really foggy, they're like, all right, we're going to hold, we're not going to hold, we'll try the next day. We have a lot more control right now with the charters to fly. And that's been working really well, except extremely expensive. Or just a one-way ticket is $1,300 on that. And so just, yeah, try to imagine a family trying to get off island. It's, yeah, right. Nobody can afford like just $2,600 drop just to get to Anchorage, which is about 300 miles away. So under this new proposal, new airline, that looks like the tickets one way will be about $400, which I don't think we've seen since I was a child. And if that happens, it's going to be life-changing, because without that passenger service, reliable one and affordable one, I mean, we're kind of set to die as a community anyway. We can't get tourists out there. We can't get access to just basic medical, because our hospital is in Anchorage. We only have a small clinic on the island, so everybody has to leave the island to go to Anchorage for any kind of major medical. I mean, our groceries, things, our mail, all those things are all dependent on having a very reliable air carrier that can work around the weather. And yeah, it's just, and we can't build anything else in an economy without that air carrier service. So it's been a huge priority and battle. And that was like kind of my focus all summer, was working with that rest of the community team to make sure that happened, because anything else we're working on, again, is just dead in the water if we can't get people on and off that island with supplies and goods. So yeah, it was an extreme challenge, but I think we're just getting to a good place. So it's really, really exciting to see if that's going to happen and be able to build up tourism again. Um, and hopefully, at the same time all this kind of happened through COVID, is the crab industry crashed. And we are on St. Paul Island, we have the processing plant for all the crab kind of harvested in the Bering Sea, North Bering Sea area. And they're supposed to process an island. And Trident, it's a big economic driver. They bring in all their own workers, who live in the plant, but the city government, who operates all utilities on island, they get massive amount of tax from that crab processing. And so they lost millions when the crab industry crashed. Trident hasn't been back now since before COVID. And again, a difficult thing, right? Because you think of processing and commercial fishing, you think it's almost anti-environment, but for someone like, we can't just choose pro-environment, not environment on St. Paul. We have to be able to find that balance. How do we work it? How do we stay involved and in control where we can, so that, things like crab processing can still go on, because we absolutely need that kind of economy right now. But at the same time goes on safely, right? Or in a sustainable way. And those are kind of the things we're looking at in our research center side, is building a crab hatchery and kind of doing crab research and habitat restoration, things we can do to help support that commercial fishing industry. It's just so, yeah, it's so complicated.
And I think that, often in the environmental space, we have this idea of like all commercial, it's all extractive and equals bad. And it, doesn't account for these ecosystems, whether it's the physical environmental ecosystem or the economic ecosystem of a place like yours that, like you said, does need those jobs, does need those tax revenue. But it's really exciting to hear that this proposal came through, and also love the spirit, the like truly what a community bonding together. And Seal Force One sounds like it was very uplifting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to merch and swag of Seal Force One.
Dude, me too.
What other work have you been doing that is feeling uplifting at the moment? I know you had mentioned something about a urban healing to wellness tribal court program.
Yeah, so one of the other things I work on is our justice side. We do run, like I said, I help administer the tribal court. We have a 18-month sobriety program, no, sorry, 50-month sobriety program on island, and we have had just our 6th successful graduate, which sounds small, but when you're on an island of 300 people, getting 6 people like not just sober, but really back in their life and doing things and contributing to the community, like that's major. So that's been so successful on island. We wrote this grant, Department of Justice, to do it in the Anchorage setting, which I'm terrified, and they awarded it. I was like, no, it's a horrible idea. It's never going to work. They did award that. And it is, I hired a new amazing court administrator for the Anchorage service area. How we're going to pull this off, I don't know, because one of the things we do have working to our benefit of isolation is isolation. So helping someone get sober in an isolated community where they can't just run out and get access to any kind of substance or even alcohol. We only sell beer and wine and within certain hours, and the tribal government is responsible for that too. Talk about complexity. Like, we're the ones who sell the alcohol, but at the same time we're running the sobriety programs. It's a difficult thing to navigate, but since it was so successful in St. Paul, we are trying it in Anchorage. We're still building it. How it's going to look, it's kind of exciting to, if once we get our first participant in, to see how this is going to happen and how we're going to, in a whole urban area, try to help and provide that support. It's almost everyday support these people need to not just get sober, stay sober, but, get their driver's license, their GED, whatever it takes to be a successful member of society. Yeah, so we're working on that. Again, it's all about the team. I have a great new court administrator. I think probably she's like, she was a scientist, actually. She was in Antarctica when we interviewed her. She was on a research boat, but she was just so full of positivity and excitement. I was like, this is what we need. Like, just that new kind of energized somebody coming in. The work is fresh, but she's so passionate about it. I love seeing that. And that really kind of uplifts me to see her just get so excited about what to me always just felt like tiny little successes, right? Like, oh, our participant today, filled out his housing application. I'm like, great. But for her now, it's like, this is so huge. Like, she's like, we got a housing application. And I love seeing that excitement. And I love just being able to support her and her growth as she grows this program. And I think that is really kind of what's filling me right now, is watching our other team members and our other staff kind of growing into these great roles, which includes our whole environmental area as well. We have a whole thing we call Eco Squared, is how we've rebranded it. It means ecosystem and economy. And we're working in that space with our research center, our education facility, our environmental monitoring app, our fishing monitoring app, kind of all coming together and trying to, as a team, build out all these different ideas that we have, research projects for the island, and just seeing these team members starting to really excel and find their stride in this weird political landscape we're in, but they're finding it and they're excited about, again, feels like little wins, but right now are huge wins. And just watching and that team. And again, it's almost all women on that team as well. And I guess kind of proud, right? You see all these women scientists really coming into these spaces, and it's just fun to see. It's fun to watch.
That's
And just
incredible. Yeah. And I will echo that. I don't think that's a small victory at all. I think, especially with as an organizer, we want to celebrate those victories along the way because they do build on themselves and build to something bigger. And I love that theme of self-determination is not just for your island and your people, but even for individuals, right? So you're really seeing it on all these scales from individual to national, basically.
yeah.
I'm going to pivot us slightly. Oh, sorry, if there's anything else you want to say.
No, I was gonna say that's absolutely right. In order to be a successful, healthy community, we have to have successful, healthy tribal members and parents for their children. And so it does, so even though it seems like just 6 graduates, like I said, 6 of our tribal members in a population of 300 is huge for us to see them turn their lives around in 15 months, just from having support and resources, really.
Absolutely. I'm going to pivot us slightly to talking a little bit about your community partnership. So a lot of what you've already mentioned, folks that you've been partnering it with, the research enterprise as well as in Anchorage. What other partners have been essential in your work, and how do you cultivate those relationships?
So I think still a really important part, especially with federal funding going down in the environmental space or science overall. The ENGOs have still been a really big essential. That private funding is really essential right now to kind of supporting the research work for sure, environmental monitoring, any kind of indigenous led environmental anything. It's kind of the private funders right now, and that is extremely important. So we're still really working on those partnerships. At the same time, interesting, again, goes towards self-determination. The way that ENGOs and NGOs work with tribal governments, we've been trying to, along with most tribes, shift kind of that relationship to make sure that their agenda is not pushed on us as a tribe. Because again, like I said, only we on St. Paul can decide what our goals should be and how those are going to work. And so we have had to just tell some funders, I'm sorry, this is not our goal, and that's your goal, and we would rather not accept your money than try to achieve a goal that doesn't fit into what we're trying to do overall as a tribal government. But then there have been other funders who are amazing, who just do these great support grants, kind of like Rachel's network did, like when the Catalyst Award, right? It's just a support money. Like, you guys know what to do. You guys know best. Here's this money. Obviously you still want outcomes, right? Like you want to see the outcomes but let them be driven by the tribal community. So we've been bolstering those partnerships with the NGOs, trying to shift that relationship of kind of be more driven by our goals and mission versus their end results. And I think that's one of the more important relationships we've been focusing on as far as third party. And then again, really stabilizing our community relationships with the other entities, the city, our Fishermen's Association, Central Bering Sea Fishermen's Association, and our Native Corporation. We've all had different missions and goals over the years because we operate in different areas. But now's the time, like I think the EAS, the passenger service, kind of brought us all together around a common cause, and we saw how effective that was, and how, okay, like we may not all still have the same goals, like they may not, they're not necessarily focused on tribal court, not that they don't support that and provide funding or anything else, but obviously that's not their mission, right? Like that's our mission. So how do we find the big common ones and how do we work on them together? And I think that'll be more successful. And that's kind of where we're at now that we have kind of an EAS in a good place. I think we're going to start shifting towards that look at the economy, the fishing industry. What are the goals that we have as a community around that? Even if it's something as small as just getting a crab hatchery into our research center, like that's could just be one goal we all agree on, and we all start working on that together, and getting funding for that. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is going back to that drawing board. Like, okay, it's not a sanctuary package, but we all know we still want a healthy ecosystem. We still want a sustainable fishery. We still need our utilities, which unfortunately right now is dependent on oil and gas, but we got this huge grant from EPA for wind. And unfortunately, with this administration moved in, they're like, no kind of wind energy. And for us, it's like, it wasn't about necessarily just wind energy, right? It was about finding an energy that works for St. Paul that is not oil and gas, because that is extremely costly, has to be shipped from Seattle. Like, what can we produce on the island? And so kind of that's one of our big things right now we're working on, is that EPA grant and making sure that money can go towards those purchasing those windmills still, working on that project. And that is a community-wide one. All the entities share. Again, it's just having energy that we can afford. I mean, clean energy aside, whatever politics are, energy that you can afford on the island is essential to the island. So
And honestly, some of the like biggest wins around clean energy have come in like red states. It really is a bipartisan issue because it goes back to that piece around self-determination as well. I mean, energy independence is the framing, right? Of course, there's the environmental piece of not wanting to be reliant on fossil fuels, but you have wind on the island. It's a renewable source. It's your renewable source. So
we are a very windy island. I'm always joking. I'm like, it's the only place you can have gale force winds and a wall of fog. I'm like, why is this fog not being blown with like hurricane winds? It's so crazy. I call it the land of the lost, right? Because it just seems like, the laws of physics and science don't apply really to our weather or
that's why you need all those scientists up there. They're trying to figure out what's going on.
exactly.
So you talked a little bit about, the goals that you have and making sure that your partners are aligned with that. Can you speak a little bit about the vision for the future of your work? I know you're sort of more in this piecemeal place now, which makes sense for the current political administration. But if you were allowing yourself to dream again and zoom out, what is the vision for the future of your work?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think part of it is we're constantly evolving that, again, like depending on where we think we can really build things. I think right now the vision is truly around being the place for Arctic research, like just everywhere. I'm going up to the Arctic Council meeting in Iceland in a few weeks. Again, working on like that kind of that focus for Arctic research being on St. Paul Island and bringing in customers into that space, not just scientists on the marine ecosystem, but also unfortunately like Department of Defense, but doing research that we feel is safe for the ecosystem, research that they need, maybe like underwater drones, which we can use for looking for marine debris, help our ecosystem. And there, I mean, there are just, so I think that's really maybe like our 5-year vision is just having that research center really be a bolstering place and great research coming out of that, and people coming in and out of the island, which is going to help that transportation, the store, which the tribe owns the store there, like we sell the groceries, we're responsible for that. Having that traffic of people come in and out, I think right now is really where my focus is going to be. And I'm not the leader of that research center. Like I said, it is a team. And so my job is to, as the executive I'm on the executive team of the tribal government, is to make sure those people get the support, the resources, the help from management that they really need to succeed, and see that research center being built up and just being amazing and just world known, I think.
Wow, I love that. That's so beautiful. I only have one question left, so I'd encourage people throw your questions in the chat, or raise your hand. We'll get to them. I'm going to pivot us one more time. Can you speak a little bit about the impact that Rachel's network and the Catalyst Award has had already on your work or on you? I know you were able to join us in New Orleans at our spring meeting, which was lovely. But yeah, how can all of the funders and leaders and the community of people here, participants, support your work and other work like it happening?
I think Rachel's network, just the Catalyst Award, when we first got awarded last year, one of the other awardees talked about it being a warm hug, and that's how it really felt at that moment, especially in a virtual world. Just this new network of amazing women around me in New Orleans, just being able to talk to just all different angles. It was very, very interesting because it wasn't just, environmentalists, but it was also the funders there and the people who support it and the founder, and like just a really vast network. And it was just so interesting to listen to everyone's stories and learn from. And that's in itself is energizing to be kind of around that a fresh perspective too, especially if I'm just doing tribal work, like I forget that there are a lot of other great environmental work going on. Farming's been one I've learned a lot about that I've never, because a lot of people in this network do a lot of farming stuff. And so something we probably will never be farm. We live on a volcanic island. Like I don't think farm's going to work well out there. But that has been amazing. I'm hoping to be able to join more things, especially being in DC. I think part of the personal side of me is I'm a single mom of 3 boys, which of course pulls me in a million different directions. So anytime I can get a break from that and actually get some female energy is really fun. And getting away from just the nonstop boy rowdiness. But it also came in a time, and I remember telling you this, Shreya, that it was the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. Someone from there had forwarded me this information about the Catalyst Awards, like you should fill this out. And I was actually in the chemo chair. I'm about to head into my 3rd round of battle with breast cancer. But filling out that, I was like, I had got that link to the nomination. She's like, you should just fill this out. And I was in the chemo chair. And when you're in chemo, you just have a lot of drugs and steroids. Like they give you a lot of stuff to make you feel good about sitting in a chemo chair. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fill this out. And I just like and just like all happy filling out that application. I don't even remember what I said. I don't think, like, because it's chemo also like gives you this forgetful thing. They want you to feel like it's not as bad as it really is. So that getting that, being awarded that during, that was my second battle of breast cancer. And probably the more devastating one, because when you get the news the second time, you're like, oh crap, it has spread, right? Like the first round, you're like, I did double mastectomy, it's done, stay shoe, woohoo, we're done. And then it shows up, you're like, oh my God, this is it, I'm gonna die. Turns out you aren't, but this award came at a great time to just kind of give me that, like, you know what, things might be okay. It might not be all doom and gloom through this cancer journey either. And of course, the funds that have come along with that have helped a long way through that cancer journey. It's not cheap to have cancer in America, I have to say.
No, definitely don't make it easy. Well, I clearly, whatever you were on or the space you were in, your application, your beautiful words really resonated with the reviewers and the selection committee, and of course, all of us. So, I'm so glad you're still with us, and I'm so glad you're here, part of our community. I now would love to open it up to questions from our participants. If you have any questions, you feel free to raise your hand, or you can drop your questions in the chat. Otherwise, I'm sure I could ask lots more questions about seals. So
I know, right? We didn't even get to really touch on
I
what
know.
or the biodiversity. It's just so much to cover. I know it's very, very hard being just all over the place in the tribal government, but still kind of keeps it exciting because there's like almost something new to focus on all the time, which all still goes towards the overall health and wellness of the island, no matter what I'm working on. It's that end goal.
Actually, could you speak a little bit about the biodiversity? I mean, let's put your science hat back on.
That's one of the harder hats I haven't been able to shift to that as easily now that I've done kind of the legal work for so long and we've had really great scientists working with us. I haven't had to dive deep into the science. Which, some ways it kind of, I want to go back to what I kind of see. Oh, it's almost simpler times, right? Of just focusing on the science, because when I was in high school, I worked with the visiting every summer, the visiting scientists who worked for the federal government, and we would necropsy fur seals, like for dead pups. Why did they die? Most of them are starvation. And I loved that, like just the hands-on science. And it was fascinating to me. But the biodiversity it's in trouble. Our fur seals are in decline. There's several theories around that. One of them being they are competing with the pollock fishing industry. And pollock is right now, it's kind of an abundance in the ocean, which is a great thing. So we're hoping there's management ways we can maybe work at the pollock industry. But our Fishermen's Association, who is the economic driver for the community in so many ways, has investments in the pollock industry because that is the industry going around. Sorry, that industry that is still kind of stable right now. So again, complex to try to just work on a fur seal issue without working on the pollock. And how do you make those things work together? I haven't found that answer yet, but fur seals are in decline. So that for us is terrifying because, like I said, we're people of the seal. So we are in a place where we have to think about, if the fur seals are lost, what does that mean for our culture? Because we have been so tied to them for, generations. That's a scary thought to think about right now. It used to be we were heavily dependent on them for subsistence, less so with, the coming of the store and all the meat and all the other goods, but it's still culturally important. So we all know we need to help the fur seals in some way. It's just, again, it's such a complex issue. Like, how do you do that without shutting down all fishing, if that's the problem, or what is the problem? That's some of the other research that we want to do through our research center. Seabirds, there are definitely some species that are having some problems. Those are in decline. Yeah, I don't know what to say. The one thing that is doing really well is our reindeer herd that was brought in by the Army in World War II. When our people were evacuated, they brought in reindeer. That herd is doing too well because they don't have natural predators. So we're at a huge abundance. And we did get a grant from USDA to do reindeer processing. And that is something we want to start on island, is processing reindeer meat, because it works just like beef, which is cheaper and better for you. Hoping to get that up and running to try to get down on the herd, because the herd has shifted from what they used to always feed on to just feeding on almost anything in the tundra, because they need the food source, and we're a small island, and they're eating all of our mossberry patches, which is, we're berry pickers, and we don't, if you saw the island, we're a tundra, we don't have trees or mountains or a whole bunch of abundance of different kinds of things growing on the island. Mossberries is one. The reindeer are decimating that because the herd is too big, because they don't have natural predators. Hope to start harvest, like, so you can see how all these things, but overall the ecosystem, I think, is not in a great place. We are halibut fishermen as well, subsistence and commercial. Our quota keeps getting chop because the trawler bycatch quota keeps going up. So they're taking more halibut, and our directed fishery, which is the fishery for the US, like the halibut, the Pacific halibut, come out of our fishery. Our quota is getting smaller as the big trawling industry goes up. So that's a battle, we're always fighting, including our Fishermen's Association, because we're halibut fishermen above all else, up after the people of the seal. So yeah, we have a lot of really hard, scary battles ahead of us, and it's a hard time to figure out how to do those battles really without the federal government. There's no more teammates on that side like there was under the Biden administration sanctuary process. We had so many teammates throughout the administration who wanted to help us get these things done. Don't have those teammates on the federal side. Not that there's not still great, amazing people within the federal government, just a different, you got to pick your battles right now. So yeah, can't really speak much to the science side of the biodiversity, except for the fact that it's in trouble, and we got to figure out ways to do something.
Yeah. Tacey's asking, where are the trawlers coming from? Are they the
They
US?
are Seattle. They come out of Seattle, all of them. None of them are Alaska trawlers.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're all a Washington-based industry.
Yeah.
which is frustrating. Because it's not even giving back to the state of Alaska economy, right?
Right.
Like we don't have an income tax, all that money is going back to Washington State, so that's not even helping.
Yeah. Do folks have any other questions or they've raised hands? I don't think I see any. Oh, Jamie does. Once the more affordable commercial air service is available, what is your expected tourism? And do you want people to visit? What does that look like? And I'll add another question to that because you mentioned the bird tourism. What are some of the birds that people come to see also? It's a two-part question.
Why are you asking me the hard stuff again?
Sorry.
The details of the birds. So our village corporation, who is the landholder, they are the ones who operate our tourism, and so it's all run through them. But of course, anything good for them is good for the community. We need them to do well financially. So we do greatly encourage tourism. I know one of the things we looked at through the sanctuary was getting that ecotourism part, like being able to get a boat maybe through that and be able to go on the water to see the bird cliffs, which are amazing. And St. George even has better bird cliffs to go between the islands and get that ecotourism in place, build a new hotel. Yes, we definitely want tourists back. The capacity is a question because the hotel that used to be running when I was a kid growing up is now, it's an old government building full of asbestos, can no longer be used. So we don't really have a really good viable hotel. We're using what used to be like an old work construction camp out at the airport. Not a lot of space in there. So, but chicken and egg, like we can't build a big hotel unless we know people are coming, right? To support that hotel. But yeah, but people aren't going to come without that big hotel. So we want to help our village corporation as much as we can rebuild the tourism industry, and help where we can, especially if we can go towards getting a boat, getting out on the water, taking tourists between the island, which would help St. George as well. So that would be great if we get tourists back. The birds, everyone's favorite, of course. I think not why birders come. Birders who come are very serious. These are people who go around the world like with a list, right? A very specific one bird that they need to see. And it's very intense. But when people just come to St. Paul for other reasons, they always want to see the puffin. Like the puffin is the coolest thing to see.
Dude, yeah. Uh,
So, and they're all around. So I think that's probably the highlight of everyone's trip is the puffin.
Imagine. Well, thank you, Marissa. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and some information about your work. I'm going to hand it off to Jamie now, but I really deeply appreciate you.
Thank you, Shreya. I really appreciate you moderating. It's always
Yeah.
so easy with you to talk through anything.
Yeah, we're just having a chat.
Thank you so much, Marissa, for being here today, especially as you told us before we came online, being such a big day in your life with your son. We hope the move-in goes well today and everything. And please feel our warm embrace for you, Mama, as you say goodbye to your kid and he moves into college. Before we let you go today, I do want to ask, I mean, you're doing a lot of work. You were talking about being pulled in all those different directions, professionally, personally. How do you take care of yourself? What's your self-care that you really are drawn
Say
to?
that this Catalyst Award was a huge the funding of that was a huge part of being able to take care of myself. And I think that for me was probably the best part of this award was being able to use that money towards just something that would help me mentally, not just physically, like with cancer, but actually like how my spirits are. And I love to travel. I love international travel. And when I can use that for work, great. But when I can do it personally, even better. In April, I was able, of course, with my family's help and the help of the Catalyst Award, able to take my two older boys to Europe, and they hadn't been over there, and I left my 7-year-old at home. It's very hard to travel with a small child, but my teens, we went, and I think that was so fulfilling, and for them to be able to see the world, and I'm hope that I give them the love of travel that I have, because that is really what I look forward to. And if I don't have a trip booked, like I open my airplane app, I'm like, I don't have a trip booked anywhere. Like I need to go somewhere, which is hard to travel because a single mom, it's not like I have people that could just take the kids whenever. But I think that's probably really how I most take care of myself is trying to really focus on the trips that I can and learning and seeing new places and having something booked out that I have to look forward to, like whatever that is. Like this Iceland trip, even though it's for work, I've never been to Iceland. I'm so excited. So being able to, and I'll just like on a day when I'm feeling really down, I'll just scroll into my airplane app. I'm like, oh, look at, I'm going to Iceland in this many weeks. And I think that's probably the biggest way I keep my mental health together is having that travel and looking forward to that travel. I love it. I love world travel.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. And I'm glad the Catalyst Award was able to help you take care of yourself mentally and physically. Before we say goodbye to Marissa today, I'll just invite everyone to come off mute and say thank you. I want to thank everyone for showing up and being together while we learn, which is one of our favorite things to do here at Rachel's Network. Thank you so much, Marissa. Thank you,
Thank
Shreya.
you.